Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a quiz that has, from what I think is the best security options for online stuff. So if you go to settings, I like this new quiz. You could do this with old quizzes as well. For most of these, I think that new quizzes do give you more choice for the questions. So make sure that it says new quizzes in your settings of your Canvas course is on. I really like the new quizzes option. So I'm going to go into quizzes. If you have an old quiz that you do want to migrate over to new quiz, you can go to that old quiz. So the new quizzes are going to be completely green. Old quizzes are going to be outlined in green, and then unpublished quizzes are outlined or filled in with black. They're not published. So if I want to take this quiz and make it a new quiz, I will click on migrate and it will migrate it to the new quiz version of that, which to me is better because I think it has more options for making a very secure thing. Now let's say if I wanted to make a brand new quiz, I can either look into classic quizzes or new quizzes. So this, of course, it does have more moderation and accommodation features, and so that's why I like to use it for this time. I'm going to go in and just call it test new quiz, and for some reason, code like sticky notes or Sage, which I'm not trying to do right now, but for some reason it wants me to do this. Okay, sorry, so I have to turn that off. So test a new quiz. You can put in point values here. You can put where you want it to go in your Canvas course, and so I probably would want it to go under quizzes, or maybe it's an exam and I want it to go under exams, or it's just an assignment, or it's a pre-lab quiz or post-lab quiz. I can put it wherever I want there. You can display the grade as points or percentage, complete or incomplete, a letter grade. I like the points version, or you may use percentages in your class. Either way, it's not going to change the grade. It's just how the grade is the percent, how it's displayed to students. So my students understand the points system. That's how I've done my class. If you want to do a practice quiz, which I highly recommend you do before you move on to like a high stakes exam or high stakes quiz for their first go round to an online environment, I would set up some kind of practice quiz assignment and then not count it towards the final grade so that they can kind of see how it works and you can see how it works from a moderating standpoint. And then you can assign it. So here's where I like, because if I have like a makeup quiz or something, I can assign it to only one student. You can assign different versions to different students. And so if I have like a version A of my exam, I can assign it to this section of students. I can assign the other version to the other section of students, or just specific students have specific tests. This is really helpful if you in the future wanted to do like differentiated assignments where you're kind of giving harder assignments to students who are on a higher level, or introductory assignments to students that need a little more scaffolding. You select a due date. So let's say I want my students to do this during class on Thursday. Our class ends at 6:15, so that's when it's due. If you don't put a due date in, it will not show up on their to-do list, so it makes it a little harder for them to find it, and they won't kind of know that it's coming. So I always put a due date in, even if it, is going to be one of those things that's only open during a certain window, because it allows them another place to find it, and so that it pops up on their radar. Oh yeah, I have a quiz. Oh yeah, I have a test on Tuesday. So I'm going to only make it available to them during our class time, because I think that this is a more secure option. I do like the idea of allowing students more time to take exams and quizzes on their own schedule. This also, if like during this time, so this is a 15-minute window of my exams are 2 hours, or if your exam is 1 hour, but you want to make it available for 2 hours, give them a little bit of window of time to deal with any sort of like technical issues or whatever. But I don't think that having one student take the exam at 9 a.m. and the other student take the exam at 4 p.m. Is that great for security, because one student can take it and then tell everybody else what's on the quiz, or even screenshot it and share. So I think that if everybody's focused on taking it at the same time, then people are less likely to share with each other, right, the quiz and test information. So if you want to go ahead and publish it, you can, but if you're not sure if like you want to publish it right now, you'll just hit save, and it's going to take you into the new quiz generator. So the new quiz generator looks a lot different than the old quiz generator. So it's very similar as far as like what you can do, but it has a lot more options per question, and to me that makes it easier to accommodate and to be more flexible with how I'm doing my security. You can put in text for questions from item banks. I think that if you do get the Respondus PC app or software, they have test banks from all kinds of publishers. So you can pull in any like Pearson test bank for chapters and stuff, and then you can build from an item bank if you want to do that here. This is something I don't think that the old quizzes has. I'm going to add instructions. Instructions are pretty important, I think, for students, especially during this time when they're not used to it. Please give them, I would say to give them their time that they have to take the test in the instructions, even though it will say that somewhere in the test. Especially for students who are going to be getting extra time with student services, you can actually give them that extra time on the moderation screen. You extend their time, but they don't know that their time has been extended unless you tell them what everybody else has. So like if you say you have 30 minutes for this quiz and they see they have an hour, they know that they've gotten their extra time, right? But otherwise they might not know if they're getting their extra time. So it gives them another level of comfort saying, okay, that I am being accommodated here. I would also put any ways that you want them to put in free response questions. If you want them to use superscripts or subscripts in their rich text, or if you want them, I think you can't do that in free response, but you can do that in essay questions. But if you want them to use carets or underscores or whatever, like I always tell them, like, don't use capital letters when you're naming chemical compounds, right? And you could do that here. Or if you want them to submit their work in a different assignment, like you could do all of those things in the instructions, and it's kind of a helpful place for them to look for information. So adding questions, adding a multiple choice question is pretty easy. You can put a question title so you can find it later in a test bank. You put your question stem in, and again, you have access to rich text here, so you can do any all kinds of formatting things here. You could put in a picture, a table, or you could actually insert a video, which is pretty neat. MathQuill is really good because you can put in equations, fractions, a lot of different things and operators. And then you can put all your answers in, and again, the answers have all the same math options, picture options, video options. You could put GIFs in here. They could pick a chemical change based on a picture, which is pretty cool. And then you would put your answers in. Sorry, my screencasting is doing a little weird thing. So I will type in what this is called, and I'll say this is called, and I put in the name for it. Sorry, my screen recorder is like not letting me do things. So I will say this is called, please don't, it's like pausing me every time I type. And then if I want them to fill in this blank, I will highlight it, and then I can either press enter or I can click on create blank space. And here's where you can get really specific. You can have them do a drop down or word bank, or you can have it be open entry. And then if you're worried about student spelling, if you're worried about them, right, like maybe they're gonna write a phrase, like they're gonna write a sentence that says like this is called sulfate. They're gonna write that in the blank because they're not really understanding how to do the fill in the blank. If their phrase contains the word sulfate, they can get points. And so you can actually do like a sentence long question and like pick out points for certain words that their entry contains. I like, if I really want them to be exactly correct with their spelling, exactly correct with everything, we'll use exact match, and it will not give them credit unless it exactly looks like this, but be careful if you accidentally highlight spaces around your word, because they'll actually have to put in exactly that number of spaces around your word, so I try to not put any spaces in there. If they put spaces in, it'll cause it to be incorrect. I also like close enough, and then it gives you a Levenshtein distance, which is like, if you have two letters that are, if they have a little typo, or you can actually ignore case, and so if they have a capital S, then they still get credit, and then you can tell how close you want it to be by looking at the Levenshtein distance, and you can just Google like what each of those numbers mean. But for this, I specifically probably want them to do exactly, right? Because if they put sulfite, that's wrong. But I can also go back and I can review the questions in SpeedGrader if I feel like I'm having some issues with this. Again, I can show the on-screen calculator for them, and I can bank that question. And there are lots of question options here, but I think the ones that most of us are probably going to be using are fill in the blank, which Canvas grades it for you. And then essay questions is really where you could do more large free response questions, because students get access to the math operators. So they could show you like go through like actual like math. They could write out their work. I think I'm not sure if it will do like fractions and stuff, but you could kind of show them, how to use some of these things. It will allow them superscripts and subscripts, which is helpful in I know in chemistry. And then so you can give them access to this, but you have to check rich content editor. You can allow them a spell check. You can set a word limit. You can give them a calculator for the question as well. And then you can have you can put in some grading notes. This is for like, I think if you have like a TA or somebody grading, like say, hey, this is, and you could also just use a rubric for yourself. But Canvas is not going to grade your essays, so you will have to come and go on and grade your essays. Oh no. So once I'm finished with my quiz,
Your iPad's reading?
okay, so once I'm done putting my questions in, maybe I've gotten something in from Respondus and transferred it into new quiz format, then I will go to settings for the quiz. And this is where I can get really technical with my security. So I would shuffle questions and shuffle answers. I allow one question at a time without backtracking, because then and I make sure you put this in the announcement or the instructions of the quiz, that like once you put your answer in for this question and you move forward, you cannot go back to this question. And I know that's not really like a real exam setting, but to me that is a better way to host a more secure exam, to say like, you have to go through each question one at a time. If you want to allow backtracking within the test because you trust your students to not be collaborating with each other, that's fine. But I think that kind of helps maybe some of us who are feeling a little stressed about security. You can require a student access code so that you don't have other people maybe logging into Canvas and taking tests for your students. I don't know that happens a lot, but you can prevent anybody without a certain, and you give that access code out right at the start of the test. I would put a time limit on my test, so I would give a 2-hour test or 1-hour test. Filtering IP addresses would mean that they would all be taking it from the same place, which you're not going to have them do that. I would allow the calculator. This is for the whole test, or if you only want to do the questions specific, then you would just do that. But if you want to give them to them for the whole test, you just do it here. Allow multiple attempts if you want students to be able to come back in and retake the test. And then if you do decide you want to do this, you can actually keep the latest score, the average score, the highest score. And then you may want to require a wait time between attempts. So like you can't just like take it immediately after, you have to come to office hours first or something. And then restrict student result view. So do you want the students to be able to see the quiz results right after they finish? Or, don't let me click on this. It may, why it's not letting me click on this. But you can, I usually restrict the student result view because I don't want them to see the answers while everybody's taking it. I will release the answers when I want to release the answers, if I want to release the answers for my quizzes and my exams. Then you can go to reports and you can see the quiz and item analysis, outcomes analysis. So as students begin to take the quiz, that you will generate some reports. And then here's where you can moderate the quiz. So for all of my students, I can see how long they've taken the quiz, their current score on the quiz, or the time. It'll show you how long they've been working on it, how many attempts they've had. And then if the student gets an accommodation, you can put this accommodation in here where the student will get additional time, no time limit, or you can say twice the amount of time or whatever. And this will be applied to all course assessments for the student. So this is great. So if the student gets 1.5 times, I can just put in 1.5 times. If a student gets twice, I can put in 2 times. And that will apply for everything that you do with that student, so they automatically get their time. And then you can moderate by giving them additional attempts or adjusting their time, even if they're not a student with DSPS, but maybe they had some technical issues and they're like, hey, I need to it only let me like dig in and I need to redo the whole thing, you can give them an extra try. So that's kind of new quizzes. When you're done, you hit return and it will take you back into your quizzes file, and then you can publish it, assign it, or whatever.